What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Specific Jawns podcast. Wow, this is kind of uncharted territory for a Phillies podcast to have 2 consecutive weeks of positivity. My name's Pat Barker. I'm your host for today. I missed last week. It was the first podcast I missed, and boy, did that hurt my feelings because it looked like a lot of fun. My co-host today, Mike Sambuco, our good friend Carl Bacuti. Thank you guys for picking up the slack for me last week. And I was watching your podcast that you guys did together, and I was just getting jealous because I'm like, why do I have to go on there every week and rant and rave and be angry about things? Why don't I ever get a positive week? And now I have one. Things are trending in the right direction. It's a good time to be a Phillies fan right now. We'll get into it in more detail in a second. But first, Mike, how's life treating you? How are you?
Great. I don't think it's any coincidence that you text us that you're ready to do a pod this week and they lose Monday and Tuesday. Just saying.
There is something that I have to reckon with, and this is like a very realistic thing that exists in my head. And you got to keep in mind, 2022, I flew back for the World Series and got there just in time for games 4 and 5, which were the losses at home. They were up 2-1. And I flew back east, and then they got no hit in Game 4, and they lost Game 5. Ever since I moved out of Philadelphia, I've come back to Citizens Bank Park, I think, for 15 games, and they are 2-13, something like that. There is a real case to be made that my support of this team is their worst enemy. So I hope that's not the case. I hope they could break the Pat Barker curse. I guess we'll find out. The way they're playing right now, I think even I couldn't screw them up. But we're going to find out this week. They are in Southern California with me starting tomorrow. I'm going to the games on Saturday and Sunday. If we don't go 2-0 with Sanchez and Wheeler against Angels starters with ERAs of 6, then yeah, maybe I'm the jinx and I need to stay away from the team. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that would be a definitive answer that you need to stay away from this team in October.
And I'll do whatever I have to do to make things right. Every time I think I'm over the hump, I was in Dodger Stadium last year for the Schwarber when he hit it out of the stadium. They won Game 3, and I was like, well, there you go. It's not my fault. And then I was there for the Orion Kerkering thing. So, the facts seem to point to me being the bad guy. I'm going to give this one more year to see if that is in fact the case, and then they might have to get a restraining order against me. But
That's
that
the whole
being
reason
said,
for the lockout in actuality. Like when we get to December, it's because we need to keep Pat as far away from his baseball team as possible.
that's the compromise. We don't need a salary cap as long as this guy is banned from all 30 major league stadiums. I think it's fair. It's tough, but fair. This week, boy, maybe not as good as last week, what you guys got to deal with. You guys were coming off, I think, a 6-game winning streak at the time you recorded last week. They go 4-2 this week, but the highs, very high. To recap what happened over the last 6 games. First, they had the walk-off win against the Cardinals. The first walk-off win against the Cardinals, the one where they won 7-6 in 10 innings. Your boy Alex McFarland picking up a win. He picked up a lot of wins this week, which was
Yeah.
fun to see. Alec Boehm, of course, who we love on this show. We've always loved him. Big Alec Boehm guys over here. We've been believers the whole time. And he rewarded our positivity with a 2-run walk-off triple. The next day, Andrew Painter gives them 7 strong on the mound. They put up 12 runs and beat the Cardinals going away 12-3. And then the third game, where they sleptwalked through the first 8 innings, entered the ninth inning down 4-0. They were down 4-0 with 2 outs in the ninth, and then put together one of the best comebacks I've seen in a long time out of this team to win 6-4 as Kyle Schwarber goes off the top of the batter's eye into Ashburn Alley, nothing but net, with a walk-off homer. Then they go to Seattle, and that's a long travel, situation. Seattle's a very odd kind of place there. And they lose 9-2 the first game. I'm not too concerned about the loss. I am a little bit concerned about the results that Zach Wheeler got on the mound. We'll talk about that. The next day, the offense, it's their turn to, kind of come up a little bit short. They lose 4-1 as they get mowed down by George Kirby. But then just as you're thinking, okay, well, maybe we're heading back in the wrong direction, they play one of the more complete games of the season yesterday with a 6-0 win. Jesus Luzardo looked great on the mound. And this team fielded like nobody's business. They looked incredible in the field, which I did not expect to be talking about. The whole last couple weeks have been topsy-turvy. Alec Bohm is a star. They're fielding much better at their newer positions that they were forced into by a poor fielder in Luis Ariz, who is also fielding the ball really well. Andrew Painter is good again. Aaron Nola is good again. I'm deeply confused by what's going on, but I can't wait to talk about it. As of this moment, with this recording, they are 2 games behind the Cubs for that first wild card spot, 2 games ahead of the Padres, and 3 in front of Arizona for the second wild card spot, and they are 4.5 behind Atlanta in the National League East. Atlanta currently facing off with the Dodgers. Last I checked, they were up 1-0 against the pathetic Dodgers, which I also want to talk about. I've ranted enough. Let's start with the 6-4 win, the big comeback. We haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. Boy, was that fun to watch. What were your takeaways from that game?
So I probably had the perfect viewing / listening experience for that game because I was at Sesame Place with my family for the first 8 innings. I get in the car to drive home, get to listen to Fransky, have a blast in the bottom of the 9th. What a comeback. I was like, you remember that Jimmy Rollins, Ray Liotta meme, him in the shower from the scene in Goodfellas? Yep. That was me in the car. I was banging on the steering wheel like, he did it! He did it! It was a blast. I was trying not to wake the napping kids in the back seat, but it was fantastic. Just to you could just feel the enthusiasm through the radio of how much fun that must have been to see in person. And I had been at the game on Friday, so getting to see the Phils come back to win that one in the bottom of the 10th on the Alec Bohm triple was just fantastic to see him come through yet again, which again, we were never anti-Alec Bohm on this podcast.
Love him.
So, we just a bunch of guys here talking biggest Alec Bohm fans in the world. That was actually game number 2 that I got to see in person with an Alec Bohm walk-off, the first being a sac fly earlier in the year, so not as exciting, but this one was a blast. It was a great game, just back and forth. Luzardo wasn't the sharpest that he's been, but he really turned it around on yesterday with 7 innings of 1 hit ball. Just a fantastic pitching performance from Luzardo. I skipped over Wheeler. I skipped over the Saturday gem by Painter, but I do want to stay on the positive side of things. The Painter gem on Saturday was just a sight to be seen. We had talked on the last pod about some of the bright signs of life that we saw from him in the Minnesota start, even though the stat line at the end of the day wasn't the prettiest, but he really put it all together in probably his best start of his career. And he looked like the Andrew Painter that we all had grown so hopeful to see as a Philly, especially pre-Tommy John. And this is finally starting to feel like he's coming back to that form. The stuff has so much more movement than it did before he got sent down to the minors earlier this summer. And since he's come back, his fastball has more zip on it. His slider has more movement. His changeup is nasty. A low 90s changeup is just, you don't see that very often. But he looks like he could do damage in whether it's a bullpen multi-inning role in the playoffs or however they see best to put him into a postseason rotation. I don't know if he's going to start a game, but he could do damage in a way, kind of maybe like a Roki Sasaki did last year for the Dodgers. yeah, as we talk about the rotation, Nola had another good start on Tuesday. Didn't get the win, obviously, but pitched well enough to get a win. He has been extremely consistent over the last several, I'd say 8 or 9 starts, where it's just 5 or 6 innings of 3 runs or less, and that keeps you in the game. It keeps the team alive. So it's great to see the positive signs from the starting rotation. On the flip side, we have
All right,
big
all right.
concerns.
We're getting. You're trying to do the whole episode in your first answer. All I asked you about was the 6-4 win, and I refused. We are 10 minutes into the podcast right now. I did not get to be part of the positive podcast last week. We are not touching on any negativity until the 25-minute mark at a minimum. Okay? So before you say any other names, because I know the tone of voice, I see the tone switch coming, we're saving the negativity. And I do want to touch more on all of the positivity that you just talked about. And we're going to get to that in a second. I don't want to brush past this 6-4 comeback win. I truly don't, because to me, it was reminiscent of a couple of the huge comeback wins against the Mets in 2007 and 2008. Everybody remembers the one in 2007 where they completed a 4-game sweep of the Mets at home. I don't remember all the specifics, but I think they won, like 9-8 in the 4th and final game. Utley scored the run on a walk-off. And it was the perfect encapsulation of who that team was, the never say die attitude, the fact that you watched the games and you felt like they were truly in it at all times. You never felt like they were out of it. And this is not, I would say, something that I felt like was a hallmark of this team earlier in the season. That kind of comeback win, to me, is indicative of more than just, it is the things that like manifested themselves physically. They had a much better approach. They put together really good at bats. They had 8 pretty weak offensive innings in terms of output and in terms of approach. And then in the 9th inning, they flipped a switch and their approach was completely different. And they put together great at bats and they grinded it out until finally Riley O'Brien, just at the peak of his frustration, decided to just throw a fastball to Kyle Schwarber and see what happens. And we all saw how that ended up. But that was truly a season-defining kind of win. It spoke more to, in my opinion, the character of the team than it did to, the approach or the actual plate appearances or the results or anything like that. And that's the kind of thing that, I feel like even in the last couple of years, even as they've been winning, has been missing. I mean, I remember their final game of the season last year. Everybody points to the Kerkering error. The fact is they went 11 innings and scored 1 run. And at no point during that game did I sit there watching it and think that, they're gonna score. I thought to myself, how could they possibly score 2 runs in this game? It seemed impossible. This team, the vibe is different right now. And I know you got that because you got to have the Goodfellas shower scene. My experience was way different. Full transparency, because I don't tell any lies on this podcast, except for the one where I said we were Alec Bohm guys. That was sarcasm. I hated that guy up until, I believe the title of the episode 2 weeks ago was "This Guy Stinks" with, I had to Google like Alec Bohm sad to get all the pictures for the thumbnail. But I won't lie about this. My experience with that game was I had a little bit of an argument with my wife the night before, which very rarely happens. We get along very well, but we had an argument. We had to have a conversation about it, but the kids, I didn't want to do it in front of the kids. So the next day I don't know if you've ever had this, one of those awkward days where you're like, we got to talk about this. There's obviously a weird tension in the air, but I'm going to wait till the kids go to bed. So I'm downstairs watching the game, and now because I have kind of been like, there's this weird tension in the air, I feel like I can't even like celebrate. So I was like cheering almost silently when they made that big comeback, because I was like, I don't want her to see me enjoying this because I want her to know I'm annoyed about whatever happened the night, which I don't even remember at this point. It doesn't matter. The point is, I didn't get to have the shouting in the shower experience. I was a very muted reaction, but I still thought it was a huge moment. Am I on to something?
I'm picking up what you're putting down, and let's not forget the big hits leading up to Schwarber that got us to that opportunity for him to hit the walk off. You see Edmundo Sosa come through with a big 2-out 3-run double, but that still doesn't tie the game, and you got De La Cruz off to just an. It seems like him and Hill are just like you get big hit after big hit from them. It's incredible. Two right-handed bats that can play good outfield defense, especially Hill. They're just great bench guys to have on this team. It's the first time we're going into the end of the season where you feel confident about guys on the bench after the starting 9.
Yeah. Yeah, completely agree. Slow heartbeats on both of those guys. You don't feel like the moment is too big for them. And like I say, I feel confident now that if nothing else, the way they're going right now, they're going to put together a good approach. And sometimes you put together a good approach and the results aren't there. I can live with that. It is what we've seen too often out of this team where the approach is not there. And it starts from the top down. And, we'll talk in a second about Bryce Harper's on base streak and his numbers for August and everything like that. That guy is walking at a Barry Bonds kind of clip right now. And I think that everybody is kind of following suit and having really good at bats. And the guys you mentioned, Derek Hill and De La Cruz, spark plugs, Luis Ariz. Forget what his actual numbers have been with the Phillies. They took a big dip. Now they're on their way back up. It doesn't matter. He transformed the entire offense and somehow the defense too, which makes no sense. But we'll get to that. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that win got the respect it deserved, and also assure everybody my wife and I are doing great. Everything's fine. Forget I said any of that stuff. Well, let me ask you this. Let's go this way because I know you brought up a lot of the bright spots. Andrew Painter, obviously. I don't think any of us expected this because, Carl and I talked on the podcast 2 episodes ago about I said, and you hit me up via text and you were like, this is Brett Myers erasure. But the idea that the Phillies would fix somebody and actually sit down and like tweak something with somebody and, fix their mechanics or their pitch selection or whatever, it doesn't seem to happen that often. It clearly happened here. Like Painter, the stuff is incredible, and the confidence seems to be through the roof right now. He looks great. Aaron Nola looks very, very good as well. The fact that they put Aaron Nola out for the Field of Dreams game and won was certainly a pleasant surprise to me, but that is the Aaron Nola of the last month or two. He's turned his season around. Bryce Harper, 29 consecutive games reaching base. He just got his 1,000th hit as a Philly. His slash line for the month of August, I wrote this down, 338, 509, 600, a 509 on base percentage for the month of August, 24 walks to 18 strikeouts. Who knew that if you actually put a competent number 4 hitter behind him, it would help him out? I wish we had mentioned that 1,000 times on the podcast leading into the season. And then, of course, our good friend Alec Boehm, friend of the show, who has just gone out there and not only been raking at the plate, but playing a mean first base as well. Clutch hits, putting together good at-bats, really kind of shutting guys like me up. Those 4 guys, Harper, Boehm, Nola, Painter, to you, who is the face of the current Phillies winning streak?
Ooh, the face of the winning streak. I think it's got to be Harper just because he's taking the approach that the rest of the lineup has just seen that improvement overall. He's taking it to the next level. He's doing something that you don't see a 500 on base percentage for a full calendar month very often. And his overall approach and performance this month has been exactly what the team has needed. And there was a little bit of concern coming after the All-Star break with whether it was injury related or just general performance drop. And then the creeping thoughts of like, is he ever going to get back to an elite level? Well, he has absolutely done that in the month of August. And as we said last week, I mean, it just goes to show a lineup needs protection. And for a guy like Harper to bat in front of somebody who previously wasn't performing, adding Luis Arias, even with his overall performance not being where we would hope it would be, it has transformed the lineup because of it's put everybody else in the right places in the rest of the lineup as well.
You know, it's interesting. I knew that having a competent hitter behind Harper would help, but it's almost helped in an opposite direction of what I expected. I looked at his chase rate the last couple seasons. We quoted the stat where he saw a higher percentage of pitches outside of the strike zone than any other player, last year. And my theory was if you put somebody who's a real threat behind him, they're going to have to bring the pitches into the strike zone because they're not going to want to walk him. It turns out they don't have to do that. They can keep throwing him outside of the strike zone, but the psychological effect is not so much on the pitcher, but it's on Bryce where he now feels okay to leave him out there. He feels confident passing the baton to the next guy, which he clearly didn't before. So all this time, I've thought that, the effect would be more on the pitchers and they would have to throw strikes. The effect is on Bryce. Bryce feels confident at the plate. He says, you're going to have to throw me a strike, but if you don't, that's fine. I'll take first base. I'll let the guys behind me handle it. He clearly never at any point in the last couple of years felt confident passing that baton to Alec Bohm, to JT Realmuto, to Nick Castellanos, to insert right-handed batter who hit 180 as a cleanup hitter here. No matter who it was, he never felt confident in them, and now that has completely changed. There's also a stat I wrote down, and, causation is not necessarily correlation, and I tend to think the improved numbers are more because of the lineup structure and everything like that, but he's posted a 1046 OPS so far as a right fielder. He's looked good out there. He robbed Julio Rodriguez of extra bases the other night. He's playing well in right field. Do you put any stock into the idea that he is more comfortable in right field and that is contributing to his hot streak at the plate, or do you think that's just a coincidence?
I think the positional change is more of a coincidence. I think the impact is more about the overall lineup construction and the protection behind him. At the same time, I've been clamoring for this move to the outfield for so long because it just opens up the options for the rest of the lineup. And by putting in a more powerful bat at first base, you just have so many more options to choose from than sticking Harper at first base. It's not like he's been a fantastic defensive first baseman this year. And so the general improvement is really out of being able to construct a lineup that, with Arias at second base, we kind of complained about moving everybody around Stott to third and not moving Trey to the outfield, putting Harper in right, putting Bohm at first. It's worked out defensively. Yeah. It's worked out offensively. And who are we to complain again?
Look, I think it's important, and I think this is one thing that I hate about the landscape of, sports media and podcasts and all that, is, I think people view it as, a sign of weakness to admit that you were wrong about something. I think you can have an opinion that is based on facts, and, it's a well-researched opinion, and it still ends up being wrong. I did not expect this out of the defense. What I'm seeing right now is Harper looks totally comfortable in right field. Alec Bohm is every bit as good a first baseman as he was a third baseman. I think he actually will grade higher. They just debuted new stats this week in terms of first baseman receiving throws, scoop percentage and stretch and everything like that. And how many, how much more quickly they're able to get the ball and their et cetera, et cetera. I think Alec Boehm being taller than Bryce Harper might have an advantage there. And maybe most importantly, the thing I missed the mark on is I felt like moving Bryson Stott from second base to third base was minimizing what you were getting out of the best defensive player on your team. I thought that up the middle would be more valuable, and I still think that holds weight, but I'll tell you
I do
something.
too. I still think he should be at second base or shortstop.
I agree, but I have almost been, and here's where I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong. I have been kind of writing third base off as this thing where it's almost like left field, where it's like, oh, that's where you stick like your Pat Burrell. That's where you stick somebody who doesn't have like range. Like Bryson's got too much range to be at third base. You see him play, and this is hyperbole, but it makes you realize, like, the whole time I'm saying that, I'm not thinking about Brooks Robinson. I'm not thinking about Mike Schmidt. I'm not thinking about Nolan Arenado. I'm not thinking about Manny Machado. I'm not thinking about these guys who are all world defenders at third base. And Bryson Stott is clearly playing out of his mind over there and is able to make an impact. That's the part I was wrong about. I thought third base, you'd be minimizing his impact. I think he's making a hell of an impact at the hot corner so far.
Absolutely. I mean, every single game it feels like he's making a fantastic play that I don't know that Bohm gets to. I mean, you saw in the game on Sunday, you saw in the games in Seattle, he's just making play after play at the hot corner, and it's not like he's played the position a ton before. I mean, coming up in the minors, he was a middle infielder, mostly shortstop or second base. He did start the 2022 season at third base a little bit, but then quickly moved off of that. So it's not like he's got a ton of of history playing third base, but he's picking it up like he's a natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if they still do the utility Gold Glove. I think they did that a couple years ago. I don't know if they are still doing it or if they or not. But I mean, he's Gold Glove worthy this year, and that was my biggest concern with moving off of second base. Is like he's not going to be eligible for Gold Glove, but he deserves to be in that conversation. And I mean, his work at third base has been even more impressive, especially in the short amount of time.
It is funny because I've been reading a little bit of Phillies Reddit, and that's a concern for a lot of people. The fact that he has not yet gotten a Gold Glove that he deserves. I might be in the minority on this, and I felt the same way with like the Zach Wheeler All-Star thing. I'm like, I just don't care about these guys getting individual accolades that much. Like, it's cool, but it doesn't really move the needle a ton for me. They do still, to my knowledge, do the utility Gold Glove. They did it last year.
Yes, they did it last year. I just looked it up. Mauricio Dubon won it last year in the AL, and Javier Sanoa.
I was going to say, I knew about Dubon because actually when I went to Truist Park this year, back in March, they presented him and Matt Olson with their Gold Gloves. And here's a brief trivia question for you. If you can't get it right in 5 seconds, we'll move on because I'm not wasting anybody's time here. But what former Philly was a previous winner of the Utility Gold Glove Award?
As a Philly or just a former Philly in general? Okay. 3, 2, 1, pass. 2026
Phillies legend Dylan Moore won.
Oh, yeah.
I believe the first ever utility Gold Glove with the Seattle Mariners a couple years back. So they do still have it. I don't think Bryson would qualify. I think that's a thing where, like, I don't know the official rules, but to me, there's a bunch of guys who play 6 different positions and infield, outfield, and, to me, that's more of kind of the true definition versus a guy who played half the season and then moved to a different position and just kind of split them 50-50. But there's no doubt in my mind that Bryson Stott deserves a Gold Glove, and hopefully he'll get one soon. I'd rather have him get a World Series ring. That's more important to me.
Of course.
But we're on the same page with that. Okay, so that's a lot of positivity, and I said we would wait until 25 minutes. We are now at 29 minutes. And we're going to get to the negativity, maybe concern more than negativity. It may be different on the players that I want to talk about here. But before we get to that, I need you to indulge me in a little bit of negativity regarding another team that is not the Phillies. One of the reasons I feel so positive about the Phillies right now is living in LA, I get to watch the Dodgers a lot. And I want to tell you right now, this Dodgers team right now stinks. They're not good. That's not to say they won't be good. They have so much talent. I have to imagine that they will end up being good again at some point. But here are two things that I feel very strongly about right now. Number one, I do not think they're going to win the World Series this year. And number two, I think it is going to be the most fun team to collectively, as a fan of any of the other 29 teams, look at and mock in the history of baseball. I remember making fun of the 2001 Yankees when they lost to the Diamondbacks. How could a team that went out and bought all those players lose to the Diamondbacks in the World Series? Let's all point and laugh at them. The Dodgers are that times 10. I think that they are going to lose this year, and it's going to be immensely satisfying, not just because they spent all this money and everything, but and I don't know how anybody feels about karma, if they believe that karma is a real thing, and some of this, I promise this isn't a political thing, it might come across that way, but the Dodgers, and you got to keep in mind, this is a team that built its stadium on the bulldozed homes of, displaced Mexican residents in Chavez Ravine. There's a dark history there. Despite that, to this day, they have a heavily Mexican fan base. They are now owned by a guy who just had to sell the Lakers because he is frantically trying to get money together to pay back money that he owes from basically some alleged white-collar crime type of behavior. The walls are closing in a little bit on Mark Walter, who built a not insignificant part of his fortune funding ICE detainment centers. And this is not a political thing, by the way. If anybody's listening to this and you're like, well, you're saying we should have open border? No. What I'm saying is I don't think anybody should be profiting hundreds of millions of dollars off of that. If there has to be like a detainment center, that should be probably something that our taxes are paying for. I don't see why anybody is getting rich off of that. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. But this is a team that's gone to the White House 2 years in a row. At one point, 2 weeks after, there was an executive order to, wipe out certain parts of like history records involving Jackie Robinson, and then the Dodgers are going to go to the White House. Like, they just, in an effort to make more money, and if you go, this really struck me because I was in Chicago this past week. I went to Wrigley Field and Rate Field, back-to-back days. And looking at the Wrigley Field outfield walls, the iconic ivy, you have a couple of ads on there and everything, and you got a couple ads around Wrigley Field, but you go to Dodger Stadium, every square inch of the stadium is just plastered with ads everywhere. And now one of the only things they didn't have ads for was the Gold Glove Bar out in left field. They have now sold the exclusive naming rights for that to Kalshi, one of the prediction markets that I think most people feel like Kalshi and Polymarket are net bad for, society. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of people hate, especially here in very like liberal Los Angeles, and they are pissing off their own fans to no end. And I really feel like they're not going to get a lot of grace this year because the fans are already furious. And to watch them turn on Kyle Tucker and Edwin Diaz and really this whole team, which is buoyed by a lot of likable players. But boy, I think most of the fans hate the organization right now, which, by the way, has priced the true fans out of even going to games in the first place. I don't know. If you believe in karma, it's going to be fun to watch them implode in the playoffs, which I do think will happen.
And after all of that, they still have the second best record in all of Major League Baseball, and all of their arms are getting healthy at the right time. So it could be a whole repeat of 2025. They do have some nasty pitching if they're healthy. That can be a big if. I think they have a bit of a question mark at the back end of the bullpen with Diaz. But and then Roki Sasaki now on the IL, as you mentioned. A bit of a concern from a pitching standpoint at the back end of games because Roki was fantastic and was a big reason why the Phillies couldn't score runs in Game 4.
The bullpen, their bullpen is in trouble. Tanner Scott just took 2 losses in a row. The starting pitching is obviously great, but the offense is doing nothing right now. They are down 1-0 in the 9th inning. Ohtani is having a down year. It's crazy what a down year is for Shohei Ohtani, but Mookie Betts is a lot older. Freddie Freeman hasn't hit a home run in the last, I think, 45 games or something like that. Andy Pajes is on the IL probably through the end of the regular season. Will Smith has missed the majority of the season. His backup, Dalton Rushing, has a torn UCL and probably won't be able to catch again this season. Might only be available as a pinch hitter. And Kyle Tucker's been terrible, and Teoscar Hernandez has been pretty terrible too. And Tommy Edman is... I'm telling you, I'm watching this team, and I'm like, this is a very, very, very flawed team. In previous years, I felt like, okay, they're just veterans. They're on cruise control. They're going to turn it on in October. I do not feel that way this year. Hopefully I'm right. Hopefully I'm right, because I think that would bring a lot of joy to baseball fans kind of all over the world.
Would you rather face the Dodgers or the Brewers in an NLDS? Assuming those are 1 and 2, which path would you rather take?
If the series started tomorrow, Dodgers. I really feel that way. I don't want to face Mizorowski 2 out of 5 games. And the Brewers' offense, I just think, is much more consistent, like top to bottom. I think there are more guys who could do more things in that offense than there are with the Dodgers right now. Now, a month from now, everything could be completely different. But Miz is the best pitcher on earth right now. Tarek Skubal is still very, very good. But ever since he, basically went down with like loose bodies in his elbow and came back like 2 weeks later after like a procedure nobody had ever heard of, he's been really good, but he hasn't been what you've been getting out of Tarek Skubal in past years. And I also think the Dodgers are just older and tired. I think they've played a lot of baseball the last few years. And, I would rather face them than the Brewers in the first round right now. That's my take on the Dodgers. Do you have anything to add? Anything I missed?
No, I would also rather face the Dodgers. Famous last words, potentially, but I do see the holes, whereas the Brewers just seem more well-rounded.
Yeah. Plus, I would like to go to more playoff games for $28. Shout out to Dodgers fans. Not going to the game unless there's a bobblehead giveaway. Okay, let's get to some Phillies-related negativity. It's been now 37 minutes and some change. It's time to get to a little bit of negativity here, and there's 2 guys that really are on my radar for different reasons. Number 1, Trey Turner. After what seemed like positive improvements in July, I really thought he had kind of turned a corner. He's fallen off a cliff again in August. He has just been bad. With him, I'm more angry and frustrated. And then you have Zach Wheeler, for whom I am just like, I'm really nervous. I'm really concerned. He has not looked good recently. He swears there is nothing physically wrong with him, and he is just missing his spots. I hope that that's true, but he does not look like the same pitcher that he was a month or 2 ago. Not even close. Talk to me about those 2 guys.
I feel similarly in terms of Turner's more frustrating, Wheeler's more concerning, and that's largely because of approach. Turner is and has historically been a free swinger, and to the point where he swings himself out of good at bats. You get down in early counts because he swings early in the counts. He swings at a lot of first pitches and it gets a lot of sliders out of the zone that he is just pulling off on and unable to get to. And where he had a lot of success during the regular season last year was he was taking those types of pitches the other way, looping them into right field for a single. This year, you're not getting that, and you're not really getting a ton of power either, despite the fact that he is really looking to pull the ball in the air based on the way he's swinging, and he's not getting those results. And those aren't the results that we need, by the way, from Trey Turner. We need last year's version of Trey Turner getting on base for Bryce Harper and Luis Rise. And I saw a stat earlier in the year. Bryce Harper was the batter with the most times at bat with 2 outs and nobody on in all of Major League Baseball. And that's largely due to Trey Turner. So his approach is really where it falls apart for me. The defense is obviously leaves room for improvement, but it's the approach that I feel like is more changeable because it's a decision he has to make. And he's either not seeing the ball like he used to, or he is just trying to swing himself back out of a funk. And that to me is just not a recipe for success. On the Wheeler side, his comments after the game on Monday, I'm not sure if it made me feel better or worse, but at least it explained it a little bit. It's like his control is off on everything other than his fastball. You don't see him walk 4 guys in a game like he did on Monday. You don't see him. I mean, he let up 4 home runs too. I mean, you don't see that very often either. But he said he's healthy. I'll take him and his word for it. But the control is a big deal because he needs his off-speed pitches. It's not like Aaron Nola where he lives and dies by the off-speed. Peak Wheeler is fastball up in the zone with some ride is a big pitch that he leans on. But he still needs those off-speed pitches to be dominant. And if he doesn't have his control, I mean, I don't know how confident I can be going into a postseason start with this version of Zach Wheeler. Last week I said I was not concerned. One start later, I am very concerned.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. And, not exclusive to Wheeler, but any pitcher whose bread and butter is the fastball, without breaking pitches to keep the hitters honest, the fastball becomes infinitely more hittable. You gotta have something to at least make them respect the idea that it might not be a fastball. Anybody, take Mizorowski. Dude throws 105. If he threw, well, he might be, because he does come out sometimes and the first 40 pitches of the game are all fastballs. Scratch him. Anyone else, the point is, you can't just go out and throw all fastballs. And the beauty of a good off-speed pitch is that it looks out of the hand just like a fastball for a strike, and then it goes out of the zone. He's throwing non-competitive breaking stuff. It's not even like he's working around the edges and he's missing his spots. They're balls out of hand. And when you can, as a hitter, remove that, you see the ball and immediately you know it's not going to be in the strike zone. Boy, does that allow you to, take control from there. I hope that it is just a mechanical tweak. I hope that it's something that can be fixed. If I have to look for a silver lining, it's the fact that his velocity is not down. The results tend to tell me it's a physical thing, but the velocity tells me that maybe it's not, and he just kind of has to figure this thing out. And this is kind of reckless speculation and open-ended and everything like that, I have felt like something is off with Wheeler all season. Just like kind of personally. From the time Mattingly took him out at 4 2/3, when it was like 100 degrees and he was at like 110 pitches or whatever, and Wheeler publicly called him out. And then the All-Star game thing, which I think scared Mattingly into lying and being like, I would love it if he pitched Sunday and then at the All-Star game, which was clearly a lie. And then now even like Wheeler getting hit around this past game and Mattingly sending him back out there with 94 pitches or whatever he was at to give up 2 more home runs. I think that Wheeler has had like an edge kind of like emotionally and mentally this season that can be really good if controlled correctly. And if not, I don't think this is part of his current problem, but it's just been a weird year for Wheeler for me. I don't know. I'm probably, it would be easy to just sit here and be like, well, he's not throwing strikes, but that's not a fun podcast. So tell me, am I crazy to say, like, his behavior has been a little bit atypical of Zach Wheeler this season?
No, he hasn't been the same pitcher since the whole. We kind of are inviting you to the All-Star game, even though it's like the fourth or fifth wave of starting pitchers that we need to pick, and him ultimately declining. He has not been the same pitcher since the All-Star break. And at the time, we were like, yeah, it's fine. Give him some rest. He's coming off a pretty significant surgery last August. And, more rest is good. Yay, win. Okay, we'll take it. That hasn't been the case. Like, he has not been nearly as effective in July and August. And it is at the point where it is concerning. So he has, call it a month plus for him to figure out the issue, and then the team has to decide if he's worthy of a postseason start.
Well, let me
ask you, which is wild to think of.
It's insane, and that's my question. If the season ended today, the Phillies would be the 5 seed. They would be headed to Wrigley Field for 3 games. Got to win 2 out of 3 at Wrigley to move on. Who are you starting games 1, 2, and 3?
I'm still going in some order: Sanchez, Wheeler, Luzardo. Probably
so in that order. If Sanchez loses game 1 back against the wall, you are going to leave Jesus Luzardo out in the bullpen and give the ball to Zach Wheeler. All right. I hope, if nothing else, this next month, and I think it will give us a little bit of clarity. Obviously the best case scenario is Wheeler figures it out and turns it around. Because I agree, everybody at their peak, he's the guy I want with the ball. Maybe even more than Sanchez, if they're all at their peak. He's just nowhere near his peak right now. And if he can't get back there, if we have another month of him struggling, yeah, all the other pitchers are trending upwards. Luzardo just picked up his 200th strikeout. It's not even September yet. Nola has been pitching better. Andrew Painter has looked incredible. What if you have a month of Andrew Painter looking like he just looked last start? What if he comes out and has 4 or 5 more starts and looks like that? And Wheeler has 4 or 5 more starts and he looks like he did in Seattle. You can't start Wheeler over Painter with the season on the line.
I would agree with that. Things are, subject to change based on the next month. But as of now, I think you have to go with your 3 horses and then fill in the rest of the bullpen with Painter and use Nola as your game 1 starter if you go all 3 and make it to the NLDS.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, Painter, the role he could be most useful in, you alluded to it earlier, is the Roki Sasaki 2025 role. And that was why when he got sent down earlier this year, I said on the podcast they should convert him into a reliever right now and try to see if he could figure it out so that maybe he can give him something in the postseason. I didn't realize that they would figure out his problem and fix it. Frankly,
I don't think anybody figured that or predicted that in any way. I think we were all kind of resigned to the fact that he was getting sent down, and I don't know if anybody expected him to get called back up, quite honestly.
No, dude, given the history I have with the Phillies, I expected us to never see him again. 2 years from now, we'll trade him for a Harrison Bader type and be like, man, we should have sold higher on that guy. But he's turned it around, and I would love it because the bullpen has holes, we'll say. I think it's safe to say that outside of Duran, and I think they have confidence in Raley, and I think they have confidence in Bolin, but there's still holes, and I don't think they trust Orion Kerkering in a high leverage spot. I know I don't. I would assume that
I don't trust Kerkering. I don't trust Alvarado. But you might get a great inning out of both of them every once in a while. But it's not something I feel is worth a consistent amount of confidence about. McFarland, though, I think he is going to work himself into that 7th inning role. As long as Bolin and Rayleigh kind of figure out, their slots in the back end of the bullpen, I think McFarland could be that fourth guy.
Let's talk about it, and then we'll get out of here because I selfishly wanted to rant about the Dodgers. I know that's not really your wheelhouse. You had to just sit there and listen to me, talk about that. Certainly, the prospects are not my wheelhouse. That is what your specialty is. You must feel a little bit like a proud dad watching Alex McFarland go out there and compete at the major league level, rack up wins, and really give them quality innings. Give me the full Alex McFarland scouting report and what you've seen out of him so far, and what you think his ceiling could be in October.
This year, I think he could be one of your guys that you trust in a seventh or even eighth inning situation. I mean, he's the type of guy that can blow fastballs by hitters. He's hitting 102. I mean, there aren't a ton of guys that can do that. And when you have that kind of velocity, as long as you know it's going somewhere near the strike zone, that can do damage. And his walk rate hasn't been terrible since he's been called back up the second time this year. He's been a guy that has actually performed, even on Friday night when he gave up the one run in the 10th inning. That was the ghost runner. It was on a little bloop flare because the hitter just kind of tugged it into left field. I mean, it wasn't like he let the inning get away from him. He was thrown into a big situation on a Friday night in the 10th inning and handled it admirably and ended up getting the win.
Yeah. It's been fun to see. And it's crazy to think that he could be a guy that, like you say, they trust, but this is what championship teams do. They have guys come up that you don't expect and they play roles. And on the offensive side of the ball, it's been Derek Hill, it's been Brian De La Cruz. And on the pitching side, I think McFarland could be the guy. And
I still have no idea why it took so long for him to get the real chance in the big leagues. This year, at least. Like, he was toiling in Double-A for 3 months before he even got a sniff of the big leagues, and then was immediately sent down. Like,
yeah, but what are you gonna do? Not pitch Taijuan Walker?
We had holes. I mean, we were calling. No, I can't even laugh about that.
Yeah.
I've seen too many Taiwan games live for that to ring home.
Yeah, you got PTSD. You froze there for a second. That was wild.
Now I'm way lost in my train of thought. But you had guy after guy come up, and McFarland was continuously passed over. And he's performing in the minors. He's performing in Double-A, goes up to Triple-A. And they just continue to say, not your turn. And he finally gets his chance, and he's performing. And it's great to see, because this is the type of arm they need from the right side.
Absolutely. By the way, a little score update before we get out of here. Over in Atlanta, Drake Baldwin hit Yoshinobu Yamamoto's first pitch of the game for a home run, and that was it. Chris Sale, a complete game, 5-hit, 11 strikeout, shutout, and the Braves sweep the Dodgers. The Dodgers, as I said earlier in the program, completely useless right now. They could have really done the Phillies a favor. If they had taken 2 out of 3, the Phillies would be 3 back right now. As it stands, they are 5 behind the Braves. They do have 7 games in 10 days against the Braves coming up. So they're going to have a chance. They're going to have a chance to make a dent in this thing, but no thanks to the Dodgers, who didn't help us out at all.
All of a sudden, the Braves are 2 back of the Dodgers for the second seed in the NL.
1 back, right?
One back, didn't update that. Okay, so back.
They are now 1 back, and the Dodgers could be... Now, the Dodgers were a 3 seed last year. They had to play the wild card series last year, so, whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I'm telling you, this is not the same team as last year, even though I think they have a better record.
The Phillies as a potential wild card team, that would be an interesting wild card series if they had to go to LA.
Oh, I don't want to face LA in a wild card. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go anywhere where we don't have a single home game and we got to face Yamamoto, Skubal, and Otani or whatever. But like, I mean, I'd rather face them in the division series than a wild card series. But yeah, who knows? Maybe at this rate, the Dodgers won't even make the playoffs. They could lose out and go 80 and 82. We'll see what happens.
And
But
in the AL,
yeah.
that would get them a playoff berth.
Oh yeah, they'd be the 2 seed in the AL. By the way, shout out to the Chicago White Sox. I got to say, I went to Chicago. I had a show out there, and I managed to, even though I was only there 48 hours. In addition to the show, I got to 2 games. I went to Wrigley, and I saw the Cubs and White Sox at Wrigley in a day game. And then I saw the White Sox play the Braves in a rainout makeup on a Thursday afternoon. Both games, the home team managed nothing. The Cubs got 2 hits and no runs. The White Sox got 1 hit and no runs. But that game at Wrigley, a lot of White Sox fans in Wrigley Field. The White Sox won it 3-0. They looked like a really good, fun team. It's nice to see them 2 years after setting the record for the most losses in the history of Major League Baseball to be a good, fun team that might be able to make a little run this year in the playoffs. So I like it. I want to give them a shout out. That is it for this episode. Good stuff from the Phillies, terrible stuff from the Dodgers. Thanks for nothing, you assholes. Phillies 5 back of the Braves, 7 games in 10 days coming up. It's going to be a fun September and hopefully a fun October. Make sure to, give us the thumbs up on this episode. If you haven't subscribed, do it on YouTube. We are available now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to try to get us on iHeartRadio and, I don't know, Pandora, these other programs. We'll be releasing on, CD at Sam Goody by the end of the year. Until next time, I'm Pat Barker. That's Mike Sambuco. We're the Specific Jawns. See you next week. Go Phils.
Phils.